Global Business Update. Michael Wilson joins us now from London. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning. What we're basically seeing as far as Asia Pacific is concerned is a lot of investors now moving on from the visit of Nancy Pelosi to Taiwan and the various tensions there. Hong Kong up about more than 2% earlier in the session, last up about 1.5%. Hang Seng right at the end of the day up about 2%. Meanwhile, SoftBank is raising $22 billion to sell down its Alibaba stake, responding to what it thinks is a bit of a tech downturn. Pelosi's Taiwan visit focused a lot of attention on the world's biggest chip maker, which is TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Company. The reason for that's pretty obvious. I mean, the United States is trying to friend-shore a lot of this kind of production at the moment. She met the chairman, Mark Liu, and at the same time, and after her visit, after she went home, China has launched an unprecedented live fire military drills or exercises in 6 areas. Beijing regarding, as you know, Taiwan as Chinese territory. This is all unprecedented and so on. The feeling around the world is all these exercises must have been, as they put it, in the bottom drawer for some time, and it's happening over crucial shipping and air routes as well. So very, very serious. As far as shipping's concerned, the global giant, which is the biggest one, Maersk, the Danish company, is an international barometer really for global trade, and it was warning of very weak demand and also warehouses filling up, supply chain congestion and so on. It loaded 7.4% less freight than it did at the same time last year. Again, talking in this country, some importers have been talking about freight rates up about 1,000% on some freight routes. Nuclear power on the brink of $1 trillion resurgence. That's according to the US Department of Energy. Also, the IEA has actually been saying, from being on the sidelines, we're now being consulted about this. But the warning about nuclear power and that momentum depends, of course, upon total safety and so on. And one accident here is a disaster everywhere. That's what they're saying right now. As far as the Ukraine war is concerned, the UK Secretary General Antonio Guterres has been warning oil companies about their greed, grotesque greed, and he's calling for oil and gas companies to face special taxes. His comments come, of course, as surging energy prices. We've seen that at BP, Shell and Exxon and the other oil companies as well, and not just the oil companies, but also energy prices totally. As far as the US is concerned, futures about flat, basically, following a 400-point rise in the Dow. Yesterday, these markets are incredibly volatile and so on. They've just been looking at rising robust earnings and stronger economic reports for June and July. Again, in major trading, all 3 major averages ended the day higher. The Dow advanced, as I said, by more than 400 points. But I think this is rather the most important take from yesterday, is that media stocks are no longer the darling of the market. This is because the pandemic bump of people actually wanting to watch things online is now fading away, and different business models are being played out, as we've been reporting on this program quite regularly. One of the things is which one will start advertising. Argentina, a new man in charge there, new economic minister in charge there. He's Sergio Massa, and he's pledged to restore fiscal order. Inflation could be hitting 80% by 90%, in fact, by the end of the year. 90%. I'm talking about. They're still in hock to the IMF for $44 billion. He's got a very, very difficult job to do. Many of the citizens are just merely responding to all this by converting their pesos into dollars, which clearly Argentina wants to try to avoid. And speaking of inflation, Turkey inflation now, we're reporting this year, Rotis and I were talking about this yesterday, inflation hitting 80%. The president there is commanding the central bank to keep interest rates low. This is against what everybody thinks about inflation, against most of the other central banks around the world. I think almost without exception are raising interest rates now. Erdogan's determined not to do that. What he wants to do is keep prices down. He's saying we all know why, because he's facing elections later on in the year. But the existing price rises may be even higher. I've been hearing reports out of Turkey this morning saying that the real inflation rate is around about 120% annually, which is extraordinary, getting to sort of not quite Zimbabwe levels, but you know what I'm talking about. UK Bank of England, again, battling inflation, will raise its rates today by the most for more than 25 years. It will either be a half-point rise or a 0.75% rise. We'll be talking about, or rather, that will be announced at midday today after the finality of their monetary policy committee meeting, which began yesterday. In the UK, still BP and supermarket groups have been urged to cut fuel pump prices. Motoring organisations are saying that retailers are basically charging what they actually can get away with right now. BP's highest quarterly profit for 14 years, and wholesale petrol costs fell by 20 pence a litre. Pump prices only falling by 9 pence. You're looking at Liz Truss there. What she's saying is that she wants to reform all this, plus also wants to reform the Bank of England and the Treasury. And finally, oil and the world's, as you know, OPEC got together yesterday. What's felt to be a derisory raise in production, 100,000 barrels a day. Obviously, all that fist bumping that Biden was up to last month didn't work, and as expected, OPEC did practically little. Maybe they will in October, but that's where we are as far as September is concerned. That's the global view.
All right, Mike. Okay, Tono, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to start with Liz Truss and what effect her wanting to review the Bank of England's mandate with respect to inflation might have. What are your thoughts on that? Because she was saying it has not been reviewed since the Gordon Brown era in 1997. And also, Sajid Javid, he's also, thrown his support behind Liz Truss and not Rishi Sunak, even though it was suspected at the time of both of their dramatic resignations within moments of each other, which was the undoing of Boris Johnson, that they might have been in cahoots. Apparently not. So does it really look at this point that it's in the bag for Liz Truss at this point? Because really, she has all the heavyweights, doesn't she, on her side?
Yes, I mean, many people are saying, actually, she's so far ahead now that they might as well call the race off. I mean, the problem with it all is that whatever you think about it, whether the conflicting claims, the fact is the country is without practical governance right now at a crucial point in its trajectory. Not only the cost of living crisis, which we've been talking about for weeks now, it seems, but also oil prices and windfall taxes and all the rest of it. What changes does she propose for the Bank of England and the Treasury? No details as yet. All I can say is, yes, you're absolutely right. Nothing has changed since 1997, and things have actually moved on. Whether it be a change in the inflation target of 2%, or whether that she will split the Treasury into a finance ministry and also an economy ministry, don't really know. She's not saying anything at the moment. She says that should she attain the post of prime minister, she'd be making those kind of decisions on day one, as it were. But at the moment, no detail, just lots of suggestions about that. She's also saying that she's watching central banks around the world for best practice as far as they are reacting to this. I mean, it's no great surprise that the Bank of England has been under a lot of criticism for being behind the curve, and maybe interest rates should have risen more quickly. It's an open debate. What do you do? Do you shut off the economy to keep inflation down, or do you try to ride the two horses of monetary and fiscal policy at the same time? It's really, really difficult to say.
All right. Real quickly, I'd like to talk a little bit about what Liz Truss is saying. People are beginning to argue that if she ventures to do that, is that not, going to destroy the whole system? Because the argument prior to 1997 was the fact that there was no independence in the Bank of England. And because of that lack of independence, monetary policies were waffling, because the government will not always make very good and informed judgment with monetary policy. And it is that independence that has helped the Bank of England to a great deal to be able to make good decisions. And For instance, that's why you see that the Bank of England could bring in somebody like Mark Carney, that was a Canadian, to come run the bank because of that independent thought process in the banking system. So that's one case scenario. Secondly, I'd also want to ask, what will this new interest rate rise from the Bank of England do as regards, stifling that liquidity? Because a lot of people are actually complaining that there's a liquidity crunch in the UK now, and people are beginning to depend on debts. So privately owned debt for banks and some other loan companies are on the rise in the UK now because people are taking debt, credit to eat now.
They are. Let's first of all talk about liquidity. As far as M4 is concerned, no, it's not. It's been higher. There's been a certain reduction in that. That's broad money supply. In terms of people actually taking debts, yes, they are. They're paying for their debts on credit cards, which is not good. I mean, what can you say about that? What can you actually say to people who've been used to having what they want when they want it and just borrowing? I mean, that to me has always been wrong. But how do you educate people into that? I don't know the answer to that question. They're going to have to face up to it. I don't think a government should be saying to people, "Oh yes, you did wrong there. Yes, you did borrow to service debt. You shouldn't have done that. Here's some more money." I don't think that's going to happen. Number two, the Bank of England. There was no problem before 1997, as far as I remember. They used to call it the Ken and Eddie show. Ken Clarke was the Chancellor. Eddie's name escapes me, but it'll come back. Eddie was the cigar, the pipe smoking, cigarette smoking governor of the Bank of England. They used to get together. As far as I understand it, the legend was they used to talk for 2 or 3 minutes. Interest rates as they are, yes. Interest rates up, yes. Interest rates down, yes. Okay, fine. Depending on this kind of thing, and that Bob's your uncle. And it used to, and that worked extremely well. The independence of the Bank of England away from politics. Well, of course. I mean, it sort of worked, but did it? I mean, was there a group think about the Bank of England in the same way that there was threatened? There's supposed to be a group think as far as civil servants are concerned in the Treasury, and was the Bank of England really a guardian of the UK? What was the function of the Bank of England? I remember the day very well indeed. I met them all. I did all the interviews. It will now be independent. What did that actually mean? I honestly do not know. Did it give? I mean, why would you want an independent central bank? Why not have a central bank that is in there for the economy? I don't get that.
But it has to be independent, Michael. I mean, I would love to have this debate with you, but because of time, I'll go to Dr. Abati. But it has to be independent because when you even go to the history of how the central bank came about in England, you will see the need for independence, and we can tell all that story about Nathan Rothschild, but we can't debate that because of time. Dr. Abati.
It's Kenneth Clarke and Eddie George. Dr. Abati?
Anyway, very quickly, I was going to... You wanted to respond to that, Michael?
No, I think you just...
Eddie, okay. Well, all I would say is, what do you mean to refine? Well, all that I would say is that that times change, and unfortunately we're now faced. I'm not altogether sure. I mean, it was very difficult to say what the Bank of England was doing when interest rates were so historically low for so long. And now we're surprised and alarmed at interest rates going up by 0.5%. I can remember when they used to put them up by 2 and 3%. Times were different then. They're different now. I'm just saying that I think it's time that somebody actually rattled the cage a bit and said, all right, so what are you actually doing? As I understand it, what the Bank of England does is it takes a view from all the various regions around the country through its so-called agents. Then the Monetary Policy Committee meets. Why not restaff the Monetary Policy Committee with people who actually have some skin in the game about the UK economy? And that doesn't necessarily mean cutting interest rates, and it doesn't, and nor would the Treasury necessarily be cutting taxes. It's a question of debate. I think the debate needs to be broadened. That's what I'm saying. I don't think it serves us to go back into history to look at these kind of things because times change.
Well, 3 quick issues, Michael, and I'll try to be very brief. First, oil. OPEC Plus says it's going to increase output by just 100,000 barrels per day with effect from September. And that has been described as marginal and insulting, considering the effort that the American president made trying to push OPEC to turn, all the taps open. Do you really think that, this is political insult, as has been described? The second point has to do with Taiwan. Yesterday, we talked about Taiwan and the visit by Miss Nancy Pelosi. And now the Taiwanese, they're saying that their own military too is on red alert. 27 Chinese military planes are maneuvering within their defense zone. And we've had attacks on waters around the island. Now, how is the market responding to that? Considering the strategic importance of the Taiwan Strait. Then, of course, oil, which is still the big issue. Antonio Guterres says, the huge profit being made by the oil companies is immoral. Yesterday, the papers were referring to BP as brazen profiteers. Guterres is talking about greed, egregious greed, as he called it. But I recall that you once supported, these oil majors, saying that, look, in that industry, things go up and down. But Guterres wants more tax. England did so, Britain did so, with 25%. France, refused to go that route. The US is very reluctant. Have you had cause to change your position? Because they seem to be making a lot of money.
Oh dear, we're onto this ground again, aren't we? I don't know how to respond to all that. If I were the UN Secretary General, I'd shut up and get on with my job, basically. Morality does not come into it. If you want to change the way that the oil majors work, then he is going to have to upset the whole system within the world about how people actually decide what to do. Why does he not look forward to where we're supposed to be going with all this? As I understand it, the UN supports the fact that global warming needs to reduce. Thus, we need a fast path to away from fossil fuels. How is taxing the oil companies and the people who've made money out of this helping that? Unless, of course, the tax is used by the people who tax them to increase the infrastructure and increase our path towards losing fossil fuels. Do you think they will seriously do that? And who's actually looking after that money? So really, it's an easy headline, basically. And the same with BP. What BP is saying is, look, if you want a windfall tax, another one on us, then that's absolutely fine. But we've been taxed. We need to be sure, and I think the electorate needs to be sure that the money that they're being taxed is going to be used towards transitioning the economy from being dependent upon fossil fuels towards greener pastures. That's where we're all supposed to be going. Are politicians going to promise that when they get that money? Is there a hypothecation of taxes in any treasury that you care to mention around the world? I doubt it very much indeed. So all these kind of things. What we're hearing at the moment is the normal kind of, British BP, British profiteering, great headline, wish I'd thought of it. But unfortunately, it's not quite as simple as that, is it? There was an outcry yesterday when Shell were paying their staff an extra 8% as a bonus because the company was successful. Shouldn't you reward your employees for the success of a company, or are we out of that now? Who are we to lecture? Where were these people who were criticizing Shell and BP and the other oil majors when the oil price was zero and below that 2 years ago? It all changes. It's tin ear not to say something, but maybe the PR of the oil companies could be slightly better. But the reality of it is that, like I was saying earlier, look at the nuclear power and coal are suddenly back on the agenda. Who on earth would have thought of that a few years ago? Tell me, I don't know. But there we are. It's the way things are changing. We live in a changing world.
That is such a good point. Thank you so much, Michael. Our dependable Rotis Adiri is here to give us an African business update. Good morning, Rotis.
Good morning, Tundu, Doctor, and Rufai. Yeah, we continue the oil and gas conversation. Yeah, Michael and I had a very healthy discussion yesterday on Shell's 8% salary bonus to companies around the world. OPEC Plus, the increase, yes, to their staff, to the Shell staff around the world, which is sad for Nigeria since the IOCs are divesting away from onshore facilities. But anyway, still along the oil and gas theme, OPEC Plus output quota, 100,000 barrels for September. And so does Nigeria now meet that increase? Likely no, because I think our quota has been 1.6 million, 1.7 million barrels. We're barely doing 1.2. So that's because of oil theft and because of the issues with our infrastructure and so on. Along those lines of oil theft, LNG, they've suffered a year-to-date $7 billion in revenue, top-line revenue loss so far. This is according to the General Manager of Production, Mr. Adele Falade. He disclosed it in a panel session at the 45th Nigeria International Conference and Exhibition 2022. The theme, and you can't get more on the nose than this, the theme was global transition to renewable and sustainable energy and the future of oil and gas in Africa. Vandalism, pipeline shutdowns. You remember NLNG was very, very crucial in assisting the states in their fiscal structures back in 2015, 2016 when oil prices fell. LNG also makes dividend payments to the NNPC. In fact, we've got, I think we've got the last 3 years or so. So about $904 million was paid in 2018. $915 million 2019 fell to $545 million 2020. And you have to think about the importance of these dividends that are paid and how the role that they play. So if you're losing $7 billion year to date, and that is so far this year, so that if you extract it, we're in August now, you're looking at, if you're at that same rate, you're looking at 14 billion lost by the end of this year or maybe more. And so that's going to impact the dividends being made to the government. It's going to impact, a whole host of issues. And it still brings to bear the issues of oil theft and how they're impacting, not just oil, but also gas as well. In fact, at this same conference that was held, Tony Lumelu's Airs Oil and Gas, they actually said, I think it's OML 17, they said capacity dropped to about 3%. 3% in 2021. And I think for LNG, the $7 billion is the difference between the capacity and the utilization. Capacity is about 94-95%. Utilization is about 67-68%. So that difference for LNG output is where you're seeing this loss of about $7 billion so far. So it's a very, very crucial situation for the country with respect to what the impact of oil theft is. And if we just, we continue to have this conversation. So this again brings this to light. We're in serious trouble, all right? Because this LNG has been a celebrated cash cow for the government in terms of what it's been contributing. The Central Bank of Nigeria, they're urging private sector firms to repatriate earnings back to the nation to improve the FX situation. They're saying that lots of data shows money's going out, it's not coming back in. But, look, if you can tie this to the other story, if LNG is not making dividend payments, NNPC is not making contributions to FAC, if you're not getting, where's the FX going to come from if majority of it is depending on the oil and gas industry? The CBN, of course, talked about their RT200 program, how they're trying to give incentives to these private sector firms. But, if you're bringing money back into the country, there's a question of the rates at which the rates at which you're going to get that. Broadcasting, I am such a big fan of Kadira Ahmed. I watched the interview yesterday where you talked about that documentary. Apparently, the Broadcasting Commission, they have fined MultiChoice. Trust TV is part of the umbrella group that includes Daily Trust for airing the documentary. I believe it's 5 million naira. They're giving them until the August the 30th, the end of this month, to pay it. Poor MultiChoice. MultiChoice has just been, they've been dragged on their cost of their...
Okay.
I know, Rufai, it's just, I'm just tired. Quickly...
Why did they find MultiChoice?
I don't know why.
I don't
know why they find MultiChoice. I don't know what MultiChoice has to do with this. Kenya. We remember yesterday we talked about the fact that this is my favorite story in all of this. The government of Kenya, of course, doing that research project for the next 6 months where they want to test electric vehicle e-mobility and how that's going to work out for Kenyans. They want to improve utilization. That's the public sector. NCBA, which is a bank in Kenya, they've now on the private side launched the first ever for any bank in Kenya, a 2 billion shilling EV facility, and that should say EV, apologies, but it's actually an EV, that's electric vehicle facility, where for about 5 years they will finance up to 80% of the cost of an electric vehicle to try to improve, I guess, utilization, purchases, and so on. So Kenya, as far as electric vehicles, public sector, private sector, they are moving, to excuse the pun.
Sorry, I wanted to talk about the fine.
The fine on NBC, right?
And NBC. And I think what we should do is that the Ministry of Information should be totally removed from NBC, should be made independent. And it should have a board that comprises of civil society, government stakeholders, and other societal stakeholders, religious bodies, fragments of society, where they can independently make decisions. It's not a good country, and it's not good for media, where you have the Ministry of Information or the Minister of Information say something, and the next day they tell NBC, go and effect the fine, and NBC quotes the code. It's not right.
Right.
And you're going to have problems with media independence in this country. That's what we're having. If NBC wants to fine people, I think they should also include YouTube. Because I watched that documentary on YouTube.
Yeah.
And correct me if I'm wrong. I might be wrong on this. And I'll put a caveat when I'm wrong. I mean, I don't...
Right, of course, you're human.
See, I watched documentary on YouTube, BBC African Eye, mostly on YouTube. They might have shown it on television.
Right.
But that was a content on a channel, on a platform.
Which is where the multi-choice argument comes in, right? Because they're platform...
And the BBC too
right.
can be on another platform called the Star Times platform, which I know they are on. So why find multi-choice?
Really odd.
And I don't get it. Going back to, what is it called? The thing you say about NLNG losing money. Somebody sent me a message. He said, the gas problem is that there were no gas terms before the PIA. So IOCs and independents could not invest in gas. Most gas were PSC, which belongs to the government under the PSC agreement. That's probably why they are losing money. So I think most that is regularized. Then they can start making money through the NLNG and all of that. That's an insight somebody also sent me.
Yeah, but the oil theft is definitely part of it. Yeah, the pipeline shut down. Yeah, exactly. Right.
But that's what somebody sent me.
Right, in addition to that, right. Okay.
Please go ahead.
Tundi, go ahead, please.
You go ahead.
No.
I insist.
Okay, Rotus, I think you made a point about the Nigeria LNG.
Yeah.
I mean, that's, a model that is often quoted by people in the industry as a fine example of something that government had done and all of that. To hear now that the same company has lost up to about $7 billion because of issues with gas pipelines, and add to that the frustration of persons who have taken oil mining leases, OMLs, and they're just losing money. And they've been complaining. In their own case, they are complaining about crude oil theft and poor operating environment. And this is part of the dilemma that we face. And you are right to say that we're in serious trouble in that regard. But let me talk about multi-choice, Trust TV, and the threat to also sanction BBC. Well, the problem here is one of censorship. When you censor the media heavily, then you are trying to repress the media space, the civic space, constrict it. And the major challenge here, you are dealing with the freedom of information and the right of the people to know. The government always makes a distinction between the right to know and the need to know. And, oftentimes the lines get blurred, and what you'll find is just censorship and dictatorship. If you look at the response from the BBC and also Trust TV, which is an arm of a Daily Trust newspaper, as you rightly pointed out. Look, they are saying, they've not done anything that is against public interest.
Exactly.
Why regulation will make sense in certain situations. Sometimes you can overregulate, and in overregulating, you restrict the scope of human freedom, which was the issue that the analysts raised with regard to the ban on Twitter. We banned Twitter. Now we are fining media houses and all of that. In fact, the Trust TV, in their statement, Daily Trust, they even pointed out that, look, it wasn't only terrorists that they interviewed. They interviewed other people. Now, so where do we draw the line with regard to press freedom? Kadari Ahmed, who was with us yesterday, she was saying, look, she is in support of self-regulation. That is the media regulating itself. But, where you have the media, you have government, there's always this perpetual power conflict. And I had asked the question yesterday, how is the Ministry of Information of Nigeria or the Nigerian Broadcasting Commission, sanction the BBC, for example? Right. Except you write a petition to Ofcom. BBC is not under the NBC in Nigeria. Maybe that's why, multi-choice becomes an easy target.
But multi-choice don't only carry out BBC in Nigeria.
That's why they would think.
Why are you trying to grass up YouTube?
That's why they would look at, multi-choice as an easy target. That is a platform that provided access. But look, it's better to allow freedom of the press. Media freedom. It's a constitutional right under Section 39 of the Nigerian Constitution. Finally, the CBN, do they have a church there?
What?
Is there a church? Is there a spiritual section there?
No, sir.
Okay, because the CBN is now appealing to Nigerians to repatriate their funds. I thought there was a policy to encourage that. Okay, so if that policy was working, this particular gentleman, deputy director, speaking on behalf of NBC, will not have to start sounding like one of those bishops, those famous bishops. Because people will, take their money, keep their money where they think the money is safe.
Right, that's quite clearly the point. It's like, why do you need to appeal? Why are you trying to drop YouTube in it? Well, with regards to NBC, things would be even worse. Thank God for the courts that had to step in with the NBC's attempt to further revise their code and get even more draconian. This is really unfortunate. We live in a hard-won democracy. This is no better, as far as I'm concerned, than the military era, where newspaper houses will just be shut down willy-nilly just because they don't like what you reported. It's completely wrong, quite frankly. And I just feel that with regards to the fine, I guess they're in good company. We were fined, weren't we? Over our coverage of NSARS, because we used footage that the military themselves ended up using at the Lagos State Judicial Panel. You cannot make this up. It just seems really arbitrary. I have to stress, this is a democracy.
It is.
Completely wrong. Then we wonder why we don't have foreign investors.
Exactly.
I think the problem is, unless you bring about true independence of the NBC, media will not be free in Nigeria. The fact that the Ministry of Information can just call the NBC DG and order him and say, fine people. Because you know what? The NBC didn't carry an independent investigation on this. The minister had announced it that I will fine them. And he just called the NBC to implement it. The NBC needs to be free, have its own board, review things the way Ofcom behaves in other parts of the world, and make its own decision. A case in point was that Piers Morgan, your friend's case. Do you know all the reports to the NBC? Piers Morgan was found innocent by Ofcom. And Ofcom exonerated him. Because Ofcom is independent. The NBC needs to be independent.
The NBC could fine you for up to 20 million naira.
Right.
So
thank you very much, Rotus.
Thank you, sir.